Next, one of the EMTs at the patient's side assumes the manual immobilization of the head. Once he has indicated that he has a proper grasp of the head, the EMT behind the patient can release his hands and bring each head flap around so they are now extended against the flat lateral plane on each side of the head. When both flaps have been properly placed against the sides of the head, the EMT behind the patient places his palm flat against the outside of the lower half of each head flap and, with firm pressure against them, again takes over the manual immobilization. You are now ready to secure the head to the headpiece of the OSS. Grasp the forehead strap at each side of the gray non-skid pad and orient it so the pad faces the patient. Place the strap so the pad is centered on the forehead and so its lower margin lies over the eyebrows and extends just below the supraorbital ridge. Keeping the strap in a horizontal line, secure the Velcro on the tail of one end of the forehead strap to the Velcro of the head flap on the same side of the head by smoothly pressing these together and running your hand along the outside of the strap from the front edge of the flap to the back of the head. To prevent any rotation of the head when pulling the strap tight, press with one hand against the other head flap or other side of the patient's face. Then pull the strap extremely tight across the forehead so its lower margin is in a straight horizontal line just below both supraorbital ridges and, while maintaining the tension, secure the second end of the strap against the Velcro on the head flap on the second side of the head. Be sure that the forehead strap is extremely tight, as this is the main point of purchase on the head. When the strap is correctly placed and properly tightened to immobilize the head, the pad will curl slightly around the supraorbital ridge, and the skin surrounding both eyes will be pulled laterally, making them appear slanted. After completing the application of the forehead strap, hold the lower head strap so the two narrow divided strips at its middle are centered from left to right on the rigid upper anterior portion of the cervical collar, above the anterior opening in the collar. Bring one end of the strap posteriorly and slightly upwards, and fasten the Velcro on its underside to the Velcro surface of the lateral head flap. With collars that have a large anterior opening, such as the stiff neck, rotate the remaining end 360 degrees. This will combine the two strips at the center of the strap into a single one, which will lie across the narrow anterior strip of the cervical collar without contacting the neck. Once you have correctly located the center of the strap across the rigid collar, apply moderate tension against the strap and secure the remaining end slightly upward against the Velcro surface of the second head flap. The strap should be snug enough to restrict any anterior movement of the cervical collar or neck, but not so tight as to significantly push the cervical collar posteriorly or deform it. When properly located, the strap should pass across the lower corner of each head flap, drawing them in conformed against the curvature of the lower head. Care must be taken when securing the ends of the collar strap to the side flaps of any device to avoid such an upward angle that the straps inadvertently cup the mandible. Use of anything that seats the molars and prevents mouth opening is contraindicated, as, if vomiting occurs, it can result in aspiration. Check to assure that the patient's vision and respiration are not impaired by either head strap, and that the patient's mouth can be opened with ease. Once you are sure that the head has been properly immobilized in the OSS, the EMT behind the patient can release the manual immobilization and move his hands to support and steady the patient by holding the upper end of the OSS. The application of the Oregon spine splint has been completed and the sitting patient effectively immobilized. In an actual field situation, this only requires between 3 and 4 minutes. Rapidly recheck the patient's ABC status and peripheral circulation in all 4 extremities. Note that unlike most extrication vests, the torso side flaps do not extend around the anterior torso. This leaves the anterior thorax and soft abdomen predominantly uncovered and available to allow for auscultation of the chest decompression of a developing tension pneumothorax, application of EKG monitor and defibrillator pads, and CPR without the need for removal of any components providing the immobilization. You are now ready to remove the patient from the vehicle. This is usually most easily done by inserting the foot end of a longboard just under the buttock and rotating and lowering the patient onto the board. Assess the vehicle's interior and determine whether it will be easier to rotate the patient and lower him onto the longboard inserted through his door, or to rotate him in the opposite direction and lower him onto the board inserted through the opposite door. Bring the cot and longboard to the side which has been selected, and place the board across the seats so its foot end is adjacent to the patient's buttock and upper thigh. Push the foot end down into the seat bottom and work it just slightly under the patient's buttock. Once the board is properly placed and securely supported, the EMTs positioned, one in the back seat, one outside the patient's door, and one in the seat next to the patient, rotate the patient so his back faces the center of the car and the longboard, and his legs are pointing and partly outside of his door opening. Complete rotating the patient and, while holding the upper part of the OSS, lower the patient and OSS while elevating the legs until the patient and OSS are lying on the board. While keeping the board from moving, carefully slide the immobilized patient in measured increments up the board while the third EMT supports and holds the legs above its surface so the underside of his legs and heels are not abraded by the foot edge. Since the groin loops of the OSS are secured around the pelvis rather than the upper legs, no loosening and undesirable loss of immobilization is necessary to allow for lowering of the legs, except in rare cases when the patient is abnormally muscularly developed or grossly obese. Once the immobilized patient has been properly positioned supine on the longboard, the EMTs should prepare to remove the board and patient from the car. When all are ready, the board is carefully drawn out of the door and supported by the EMT at each side. When the foot end is near the outer edge of the seat, the process should be stopped so the EMT guiding the feet can come out of the car. While maintaining the board in a level horizontal plane, carry the board to the prepared ambulance cot and carefully place the patient and longboard onto it. Roll the cot to a safe location at some distance from the vehicle. The OSS and patient can now be secured to the backboard. Start by placing a strap across the upper torso. Thread the strap through the hole nearest the armpit on one side of the board, up through the armpit, across the torso, down through the opposite armpit, and through the hole on the opposite side of the board. Bring both buckle halves up over the patient and connect them. Pull the end of the strap through the slide of the buckle until the strap is tight. Note that this strap should not include the arms. Now, locate the iliac crests, and after threading a strap through the hole adjacent to them at one side of the board, run it around the patient's lower torso, across both iliac crests, to the like hole on the other side of the board. Again, the arms should not be included. Then bring the buckle halves up over the patient, connect them, and tighten the strap. This strap should lie across the pelvis and not across the soft anterior abdomen. Because the patient's head, neck, and torso have been fully immobilized with the OSS, when the patient and OSS have been tightly secured to the longboard at the upper and lower torso, the head, neck, and entire torso are in effect now immobilized to the longboard. This leaves only the legs and arms that need to be secured. Start by tying the feet together to prevent their weight from causing them to rotate outward during transport. This can easily be done using a long cravat. Insert the cravat through the void found under each ankle and center it so both tails are equal. Bring each tail up around the side of the ankle and then together in between the feet. Now take one tail across the sole and around the outside of each foot. Lastly, tie the two tails together on the dorsum of the foot as shown. To secure the legs to the board, start by placing a strap across both legs proximal to the knees from one side of the board to the other. Because the lower legs are narrower than the distance between the sides of the board, padding along their sides will be needed to prevent them from moving laterally if the board must be tipped on its side. Place a blanket roll against the outside